Welcome to episode 3 of The Shift and Beyond. We are going through the shift in consciousness so quickly, sometimes it's hard to keep track. But then sometimes when we deal with the challenges of life, it may feel like we're not going forward at all. So it's fascinating and encouraging to take a step back and see the progress. Today, we're going to take a look at the incredible awakenings that have occurred in our cultural consciousness in only a few decades. How encouraging it is to see the leaps and perhaps acknowledge ourselves for the work we've done. Toward the end of this episode, we'll share with you what the Council and the Travelers, who we call the Peeps, have to say about our progress so far. You might recall I told you in previous episodes about these wonderful helpers from beyond the physical, and their wisdom will play greatly in episodes to come. Hi, I'm Carolyn. I'm a counselor, author, and trainer, and your host for The Shift and Beyond. It's really fascinating to take a look at what has already been awakened in humankind's awareness, or we might say, what is the progress of being absorbed into our new reality? Most of us are most likely still incorporating these new concepts into our lives, but many have already at least recognized these truths and have the intention of integrating these new perspectives. Some say we will be going through the shift, this massive awakening of humankind, for approximately the next 10 years. On the one hand, this may seem like plenty of time, but as a counselor, I can say that the changes we want to make within ourselves don't happen overnight, and they take conscious intention. So we need to dig into this work now. The exponential shifts in human consciousness over the past century, and especially the last few decades, have been hard to miss. It's valuable to take a look at some of the major milestones where the new consciousness has entered into general awareness, and it seems to be speeding up. The internet and globalization have contributed to how concepts have moved from relatively small groups of people into broader consciousness. These are some of the foundations to the shift as I see it. As East met West in the 1960s and 70s, the West gave industrialization and modern conveniences, and the East gave yoga, tai chi, meditation, karma, and reincarnation. The idea that the soul comes to earth again and again to learn, grow, and experience. In the meantime, quantum physics and string theory were finding that ancient Eastern wisdoms were matching up with the new paradigms in scientific reality. Concurrently, the conventional Christian perspectives were learning that reincarnation was once a part of that heritage, not the least of which, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God, which is from John 3:3 in the Bible, King James Version. According to some church scholars, reincarnation was part of Christianity at the time of Christ, and only around 500 AD was it removed from the official Christian doctrine. If you want more on that, Google about Emperor Justinian and reincarnation in the mid-500s AD. The implications change the concept that we have one life to live, a one-shot deal where we each have an inequitable experience of life, as mercurial as the roll of the dice. In its place was the idea that we have many lifetimes in which we continue to learn and grow. In this context, each life became an opportunity to expand, to clear up our shortcomings, to develop our consciousness, and to reach closer to the divinity from which we came. The reincarnation perspective seemed so much more fair and logical and offered a view of divinity that was less impulsive and more accessible and loving. Concurrently, the practice of meditation became popular in the West, and the concept of finding the truth within, or finding God within, began to merge into general consciousness. As much as we might find inspiration in sharing our religious practices, the nexus of our spirituality was starting to move inside. Around the same time came another big leap into the shift. Our thoughts create our reality. Of course, we could see the seeds of this concept in the childhood book, which many of us experienced, called The Little Engine That Could, about a toy engine that reached the top of the hill by saying over and over to himself, "I think I can, I think I can, I think I can." Then, in the 80s, the book and movie The Secret ratcheted this idea into popular consciousness, making it clear that we step into an experience of life of our own making through the beliefs we hold and the thoughts we think. So, the work at hand became changing those mental constructs. Equally popular in that time frame was the work of Esther Hicks, who spoke of the law of attraction. What you visualize, think about, and have emotions about is attracted into your life. In a short while, these principles found a home in the corporate and sports worlds as well. Workshops and trainings abound regarding visualization, manifesting, and creating win-win solutions. Vision boards and treasure maps were exercises to bring the desired results into being. Tools for making real psychological and spiritual change within our personal psyches became available and were no longer considered weird. As a corollary, greatly aided by the popularity of the 12-step programs for addiction, folks began to see the wisdom of putting aside victim consciousness. Since the beginning of recorded time, the dramas abounded of perpetrator and victim, bully and prey, dominator and martyr. Even today, these dramas play out. But you might say that the jig is up, for the world of self-help, personal growth, counseling, and genuine spiritual commitment have grown. And people have begun to realize that the trade-off isn't worth it. You can have your personal power and self-respect, or you can be a victim, but you can't be both. And the place where it all changes is in our thoughts and our belief systems, which, as we shall see, is central to the shift. Since the self-searching imposed by our COVID isolations, people have been more and more interested in ridding themselves of the baggage of mental and emotional programming that has been passed down through the generations. We will look at this in detail in episodes to come. In the meantime, the internet came in. No longer were we tapping into the truth according to Walter Cronkite in the evening news. Now we could access multiple resources and perspectives on what we called reality. This has certainly had its drawbacks, as anyone with an axe to grind could grind it away in public. But it also offered the ability to see perspectives and realities that mainstream TV might never bring to focus. One of these was that of near-death experiences, or NDEs. People who had been clinically dead, then were revived, and who could now tell their stories of what it was like over on the other side, in the world of spirit, beyond the physical. The sheer quantity of recorded experiences created an undeniable database. Thousands, told their stories of dying, many of whom were revived by modern technology such as the defibrillator, or even returned to their bodies spontaneously. And now they could relate this experience of what it was like to go into the world beyond the physical and know that they were still themselves, with or without a body. While evidence of NDEs has been around for centuries, suddenly the internet made available to the general public thousands of personal accounts of going over to the spirit world and coming back intact, and usually with information about the purpose of life and better ways to live on earth, knowledge that rang as truth to many. The University of Virginia at Charlottesville has been one of the main researchers in this phenomenon, as well as that of children who could recall their past lives, which can often occur around the ages of 3 to 5. NDEs suddenly became a source of direct spiritual connection and knowledge of what life is like in the spirit world, an update from what had been available in historical spiritual customs that were hundreds or thousands of years old. And the authorities were not just ancient texts, but friends and neighbors who had faced trauma, clinically died, and returned to life to tell about their experiences. NDEs took much of the medical world by surprise and by storm. If you haven't read Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander, it is one of the most captivating stories of a neurosurgeon whose life was radically altered by his miraculous recovery from meningitis and his own near-death experience on the other side. Account after account of NDEs from people in all walks of life and all religions, even those who had no religion, verified the data, suggesting that there is a greater reality than that of our lives on earth, something more loving and more beautiful, something more harmonious. And our time on earth exists to learn, grow, and experience. While there were remarkable consistencies between NDE experiences, each brought back different pieces of information from the spirit world and clear knowledge about the purpose for our journey into the physical on the earth plane. Perhaps the most important factor that has brought us to the shift emerged into the public eye more recently, and it piggybacked on the NDE revelation that our consciousness exists whether we are in the body or not. This next factor is a concept that we plan our experience of life on earth before we incarnate. The ups, the downs, the struggles, the betrayals, the losses, the wins, the victories, the hurts, the loves, all the stuff we have gone through was actually set up in advance by our own souls in order that we would evolve and grow while living on planet Earth. This at one time seemed unfathomable, and we would ask, why would I want to do that to myself? Yet, as we listen to the stories of one rememberer after another, we come to realize that we have extraordinary power to create, and that the challenges we set up for ourselves catapult us to greater levels of our own consciousness. Understanding the magnitude and power of our own souls, our own beings, is a cornerstone in the process of the shift. For me, this concept was brought into awareness through the YouTube interviews of Christian Sundberg. I had actually heard my Native American elder Mary Thunder talk about it many years before, but somehow it didn't become a reality for me until I heard Christian's story. He had suffered from an illness that caused him excruciating pain that lasted about a year. Healed but terribly traumatized, he underwent a long period of EMDR psychotherapy, which we will discuss in detail later, as well as intensive meditation. During one of his meditations, Christian suddenly remembered his life in the spirit before he came to earth. He remembered making the decision to submit himself to the heavy density and separation inherent in the experience of incarnating on earth, because this experience would help to advance his soul quickly toward greater love and radiance. In his story, he shares his process before incarnating of setting up the challenges he wanted to go through in physical life, then tells how he descended into the density of earth, and ultimately how he was able to process the growth that those experiences offered. The concept that we set up our challenges before we come to the planet is a definite game changer. It means that in advance of our birth, we set up our tasks, our trials, our experiences, and our relationships so that our souls might overcome, grow, and benefit completely. And this changes the narrative about the purpose and meaning of life on earth. Gone are the excuses and blame that come from victim consciousness because we designed and planned it. If we actually set up the experiences of life ourselves, coordinating our growth mutually with those of fellow souls who are also in the same process, then we are not victims, but authors of our own evolution by the choice of our own souls. We are potent creators who have set up situations by our own choice and designed for our own benefit so that we can better evolve and grow, to come into our own sense of self, power, and fulfillment, and to discover the divinity that is our essence. This completely changes how we see anything seemingly unpleasant in our lives. Not that we always remember this, even if it is part of our belief system, but ultimately it leaves us with the power clearly in our own hands, so that instead of blaming and trying to control our environment and those around us, we can question, what am I trying to learn from this? If I set this up for myself, what was the purpose? We can now put the focus on healing our world from the inside, instead of insisting that the world around us change. As humankind comes to know that this reality can prevail by the intention of enough people, that critical mass is being met and helps us to get ready to leap into the shift that is quickly unfolding. Another major piece of the shift, not new but essential, is recognizing that we are not alone in the universe. Consciousness is now broadening the concept of help from beyond. God, angels, saints, guides, and our ancestors on the other side have been a part of traditional consciousness. But as we begin to expand our awareness to the greater cosmos, we are beginning to perceive even more support and help. Consider, only a few decades ago, we were becoming global, but now we are becoming galactic, becoming universal. The book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was an 1870s science fiction about being able to exist in a vessel under the water. Today, no one gives a second thought about the existence of submarines. The comic strip character Dick Tracy could solve mysteries with the help of a unique wristwatch with which he could talk to people. Now we all have one. Most of us grew up with movies and books about space beings and space travel. But even now, Congress has been having hearings about what is known regarding UFOs or UAPs, cultures and technologies from beyond our solar system, both in physical form and other dimensional. While some might see this as a threat, mostly promoted by those who would profit from that perspective, the majority of those who have had direct contact speak of beings from other planets as highly advanced helpers, who are ready to give their support with technologies and wisdom that our damaged planet much needs, as soon as we are ready. Our job is to invite them and tune into them to the best of our ability. And this, too, is coming more into consciousness. If we are spirits having a physical experience, as many say now, and we return into the world of spirit when we leave the third dimension of physicality, then it is valuable to understand that the three-dimensional existence on Earth is by design among the most dense. Sometimes it is even called the third density. It is the most challenging and functionally relatively slow, which is why it provides such an intense learning experience. Each dimension beyond us is more and more subtle, but also requires greater consciousness and connection to the source, to God. We will share more about this in episodes to come, but it is valuable as we move into the shift to understand the energetic difference between where we have been and where we are going, and to recognize that our own evolution is taking us further into the more subtle realms where consciousness is lighter and more expansive. And as the veil becomes thinner, this is no longer a function of those who are the most holy or who have special gifts. Accepting that we are not the only intelligences in our universe, and that there are others more advanced and ready to offer support and knowledge, is part of our awakening process. Attuning to the wisdom of the higher realms is becoming more accessible to everyone. Thus, knowing this and asking for help takes us closer and closer to the possibility of a new reality that is our destiny as we move through the shift. I want to add one more very interesting piece that we might say is more recently coming into our understanding, and that is evidence that we humans are inherently telepathic and clairvoyant. Not that we generally are aware of living that way, but research in that area is making it clear. If you want to give yourself a great treat and an inspirational boost, tune into the Telepathy Tapes podcast. Historically, our culture has quietly tucked away those born autistic, but suddenly it is coming to public perception that many of these individuals are not only aware and present despite their physical limitation of speech and body control, but they are often extremely advanced and intelligent souls with highly developed abilities of telepathy and other transcendent skills, such as journeying out of the body, remote viewing, or being able to clairvoyantly see distant locations, or even meeting with others in an out-of-body state. Podcaster Kai Dickens decided to do a series on the research with autistic children by Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, and the telepathy tapes quickly shot up to #1 among podcasts watched by millions. In addition to uncovering a world of social interaction beyond the body, studies also suggest that these abilities exist in all humans at birth, though they tend to be sublimated as we take on language. The implications about human capabilities are astounding. As autistic individuals have been taught communication techniques such as what is called spelling, by pointing to letters or using a keyboard, they have consistently revealed their advanced non-physical communications abilities, suggesting that humans have much greater capacity for accessing the non-physical world beyond what most of us are now utilizing. But we can, and we are, starting to learn how to use the potential that we innately have. As such, more elements of the current shift continue to fall into place as we gain awareness of abilities that we all naturally possess, ones that can be relearned, retrained, and utilized in our lives if they were not lost. By our intentions, we can begin to awaken these natural skills which exist within humankind, perhaps often preserved by indigenous cultures, but available to our consciousness as we progress through the shift and beyond. Evidence of the shift is before us. So how can we get on board with this new consciousness? The veil is getting thinner. Our intuitions are becoming clearer. The cavalry is poised to bring in support. And we now have tools more commonly available to help us catapult into this new way of living. We can more easily access traditional help, such as meditation and prayer, technological help, such as binaural beat music, self-help in workshops and books, and psychological help, such as EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, as well as many other therapies. Messages from the masters and the seers are merging into a theme about the transformation that is unfolding. But it is for us, each individual, to be a part of the shift by doing our own inner work and raising our own consciousness, by joining with others in this process, and by adding our own candle to the flame. And more on this to follow as well. In the meantime, I want to share with you from the two groups that I channel that I encountered for the first time in a QHHT hypnosis session. Since that time, they have provided much information about the shift and beyond, and in the next session, I'll introduce them to you in more detail. But for now, I want to share with you a bit of their wisdom. The first quote is from the council, who say they are from the source. At times, one might think that you are caught in a negative spiral on this planet, but keep in mind that it is the ability to see what you are moving away from, what you are rising above, that allows you to even know that there is the contrast, and that you are rising into the light, into the love. Important it is to have compassion and understanding for those still caught in the struggles of power, of chaos, of fear. This is an evolutionary process through which you have passed in part, and with which you are also still working through at times. However, great strides in consciousness have occurred, great movement forward in awareness, in understanding, and in the practice of raising yourselves up, of practicing to be loving, of practicing to be kind, of practicing to live with an awareness of the higher consciousness and the principles of responsibility for your life and caring for others. This leads you into oneness, and from time to time, and more often, you will find yourself experiencing this oneness, this unity in the diversity, this expansion of your heart, where all that is external to you is accepted and loved, even when it is not the same. That is from message 23. This second quote I'm sharing with you is from the group I channel called The Travelers, who are very delightful and who have given themselves the nickname of the Peeps. They are able to move between planets and have spoken about how crop circles are made. I think of them as our intergalactic supporters and friends. Here's what they said about this time period. There are many cultures that are advanced in their consciousness, like us, the travelers, who call ourselves to you the peeps, that you might know the side of us that is friendly and joyful and filled with happiness, the part of us that cares deeply for your well-being and comes to serve you on your planet. Know also that we bring advanced knowledges that you call scientific, and that as time passes, in soon time, these are and will be shared with you. For in more advanced consciousness, that called spirituality and that called science are not separate. For in the frequencies in which we reside, the awareness exists of how these frequencies heal and uplift and inform, and also allow us to travel and be with you. This will be unfolding to a greater and greater degree in times to come. We remind you now that staying in a state of joy, intending happiness, practicing to see things with humor and love are part of the transformation that you are now undergoing. We will remain connected to you, to all those who wish to raise their level of vibration and functioning to what is coming that you call the shift and the beyond. And that was also message 23. And so I'm thrilled to share the wisdom of these two groups with you. They have inspired me and hopefully are and will be an inspiration to you as well. In episode 4, I will actually share with you the QHHT hypnosis session in which I first met the travelers, aka the peeps, and the incredible coordination of the beings on the higher levels and other planets, as well as on Earth, gathering to help create the shift. It was quite an adventure. If you enjoy what we are sharing, please like and subscribe. And also, if you are interested in counseling, you may contact me at my website, claimingyourself.com. See you next time. I send you my love.